Yeah. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chitra Vairavan from Batch 37 of Bharatanagar Institute of Management, your MC for the session. It gives me great pleasure in welcoming all of you to Athenaeum 2020. Athenaeum is a research conference organized by the Center for Contemporary Management and Research, the research wing of BIM, with a view to promote academic value in management practice. The key theme of Athenaeum 2020 is globalization versus localization in the age of disruption. Welcome to the third panel of the day, Managing Human Capital. The most critical resource that is shipped or exchanged across borders in the process of globalization is human talent. As human capital is scarce and geographically concentrated in a few countries, it has been difficult to effectively localize business operations with the improved human resource. The present pandemic has caused a fundamental shift in how we work, with human resource leaders at the center. In this panel, we will understand how the disruption in business processes of managing human capital and what this means for a more globalized and connected world. It is my honor to introduce the chair of this panel, who is our very own BIM alumna, Ms. Ramya Balakrishnan. She leads the talent and performance management team for Maxis, a telco market leader in Malaysia. She joined General Electric as the ASEAN Organization and Talent Development Manager, handling employer branding, university relations, and leadership programs in the region. She then moved to Unilever as a leadership development manager, later becoming the senior HR business partner for sales and marketing functions in Malaysia and Singapore. She has extensive experience on path-breaking practices like open talent economy, future of work models, evolving workplace practices, and digital HR enablement. She was recognized as the 100 most inspirational LinkedIn icons to follow in Malaysia. She was also awarded the Asia's Women Leaders Award by the World Women Leadership Congress and Awards 2019. We welcome you, ma'am.
My pleasure, Chitra.
Next, we have Mr. Tanvir Singh. He currently leads the EUI GigNow recruitment team. He has over 14 years of experience in talent recruitment and development. He started his career with Crane Software International Limited, where he developed the key accounts and managed total account relationships for various institutions like IITs, IIMs, state private universities, and CSIR, ICMR, and AIMS labs. Later, he joined Infosys, where he was responsible for campus and lateral recruitments, employer branding, and recruitment research and planning. Mr. Singh has a rich experience in university relations, experienced hiring, and has held a major role in enhancing the process to find the best candidate for his organization. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you so much.
I would like to welcome the next speaker of the panel, Ms. Supria Dhanda. She is the Vice President and Country Manager of Western Digital India. She leads India's strategic charter and its expansion, key customer relationships, government relations, sustained growth of research and development capability, and serves as a spokesperson for the corporate brand in India. She has more than 22 years of experience and strongly believes in institutionalizing an inclusive culture at the workplace, one that values respect and equality for all alike. She is a proud recipient of the recognition of top 100 best companies to work for women in India, Working Mother and Avatar study in 2016 and in 2019. She was also recently been awarded the CEO of the Year for Diversity and Inclusion at the Global DEI Summit 2020. We welcome you, ma'am. Once again, I take immense pleasure in welcoming our speakers and participants at Athenaeum 2020. If the participants have any questions, please post it in the chat box and we will take it up towards the end of the session. I request the chair of the panel, Ms. Ramya Balakrishnan, to take the discussion forward.
Thank you, Chitra. Thanks for the elaborate of the panel. Goes without saying, I think I'm probably the proudest today to be back to BIM, chairing a session and really being able to give it back to BIM, I think, really pay it back for whatever I've learned from BIM. So really happy to be here. When Dr. Satya reached out to me and said, do you want to be part of this panel? I was like, of course, I would really love to speak to all the students here today, and not just from BIM, but from a lot of other institutes. So really happy to be talking, and I have a fantastic panel here. So just to begin with, when Dr. Satya asked me to chair the panel, I was looking at, okay, so what are some of the other topics that are being discussed today, right? So there is a topic on, there was a panel on disruption, there was a panel on data and decision making, and the whole concept around globalization, localization, and the pandemic, which is sort of, I think, shook up almost every single industry, every single function in every industry. Now, as I looked at it, I said, I think there are a few concepts to look at, right? So one is this whole idea of globalization, which is something that we've been seeing over the last many years. So I think it's been happening more than about 15 to 20 years now. We've been talking about it as a concept, talking about as things that are influencing how people work, how industries work, and how human capital is changing as well. An element around disruption, which again has been a topic that's been on for 10 years and for more than 10 years. And even within disruption in HR, we've been talking about reinventing HR. We've been talking about disrupting HR. We've been talking about transformation in HR. But I think all of this got put on really a 10x mode when the pandemic happened, or even a 100x mode when the pandemic happened. So it's quite interesting to see how across all functions, across all industries, the pandemic has really started really bringing the disruption and transformation that's more or less been in words in a lot of functions, in a lot of industries for the last 5 to 10 years. So with that, I thought we should start the session with just asking the panel here, from your experience and what you've seen happen in your own organizations or in your industry or in India or in any other country for that matter, what are the disruptions in HR that you have seen, or what are the major things that has been disrupted with respect to HR? Maybe Supria, do you want to start with your views on that?
Thanks, Ramya, and very happy to be here. And again, compliments to Dr. Satya. Got an email likely, and it's very difficult to say no to anyone. And he is, we share the same alumni, and and I think before we start the session, it's always good to give back. Because whatever we are and wherever we are, we owe it to their institutes. More importantly, the brick and mortar is kind of dissolving. We owe it to our professors. We owe it to all the academicians who really put forward their best foot to make sure that we go back and, go forward rather and conquer the world. So happy to be here and interact. It's always good to interact with young students. It just makes you shed off a few decades, I would say, in my case. In your case, I'm sure a few years. So coming to the question of what has pandemic done? Oh my God, in the world of HR. So I've spent many years in the world of HR before I transitioned to business, and in between an entrepreneurial stint of my own, which had very few elements of HR but largely was business. I think the business has disrupted. What is HR going to do? HR is always going to follow the strategy what the business is going to follow. So when the business figured out that sustainability is there, that we need to think about, because the supply chain blockages were there. There was a shutdown. There were lockdowns in many countries. There is an interdependence of, you design something here, you go fabricate elsewhere, and then you develop somewhere else, and then you ship and market somewhere else. And all of these things, when the entire countries were in lockdown, the entire movement of flow was disrupted. So when the business kind of stands at a standstill, where you do not know what tomorrow, next hour holds, it does put a lot of pressure on people. I'm a big believer in technology. I lead a large data technology company in India. But what importantly I always say is, it's humans who are behind making the technology work. Who's inventing AI? Who's putting the algorithm in place? It's obviously people like you and me, and I would say much brighter people out there. And therefore, when you realize that those people cannot step out of their house, they cannot come to office and co-create and collaborate, how do you think innovation is going to happen? All of us overnight, we had to use our home as the office. Our iPads, our Windows, our Dells, all of those, they became our window to the world. So when you're sitting in a very small space and now you're trying to reach out, I can't even imagine the HR function, which is the custodian of culture. Obviously can't figure out, right? They can't see every time. They do not know what the boundaries are. You got children crying, you got elder parents looking for care. So I think the world of HR got disrupted a lot more. When I say HR is the human resource otherwise, but those who are custodians of HR. They had to figure out overnight how to battle the pandemic, how to communicate lockdown, how to tell people you're safe, how to look at business sustainability and make sure that they are partnering with business leaders. So I think that function has gone through many disruptions. The only thing that's held them well is an open mind. knowing you don't have answers, the will to experiment,
Yeah.
the humbleness to say that a lot of things sometimes we do in corporate which do not put people first. When you have a mass scale reduction, it's definitely not about few people. It's about making sure the business is overall sustainable and not many people stay in jobs. So I think HR, this point of time, was just focused on employee first, safety, both mental, emotional, and well-being. So I think that has been the biggest disruption that I have seen. You guys moved away from Excel and technology and said, let's come back and touch people's lives again. So I think
Yeah.
the digitalization took a backseat and people and their safety took a front seat. I would say that has been the biggest trends that I've seen change, Ramya.
Thanks, Supriya. How about you, Tanvir?
I think, Supria, I think you covered most of the points, and I echo some of the thoughts, some of the points that you mentioned more as a business leader. But I think one thing that if we look around and ask ourselves as human resource professionals as to whose business is HR, it's everyone's business. And what is the business of HR? Business of HR is business. So I think you just mentioned, Supriya, about it, that ensuring that the sustainability of business, the business continuity was not impacted. But at the same time, a lot of initiations that were taken in very short span of time. I think things that were expected to hit us or to get incorporated like 5 years from now really became a reality in like a flat 15 days. We didn't have enough time, or rather any time to respond or prepare and respond. So I think that is where a lot of things came in. We saw very quick, very agile policy shifts. Putting people first was not a priority anymore. It was the only option. It was the Hobson's choice. And I think all firms very quickly realized all of this. I think the first of such things was for leaders to come down to the level of all employees and show their own vulnerability. So I remember one of the business leaders actually doing a town hall here at EY, and saying that, hey, all of us are in basically the same storm. There is no difference between you and I, where we stand as of today. If any one of you, let's say with 5, 7, 10, 14 years of experience, are experiencing a pandemic of this size and scale, and don't think that a person like me with a 25, 30 years of experience would have had any experience. So we are absolutely in the same storm. What we can really collaborate on, and join hands together on, is to ensure that we build the safest boats for ourselves. So I think that is where we saw a huge amount of collaboration from top to bottom that came in, and that I think was life changing for a lot of people who thought, hey, our jobs are going to slip by, our careers are going to get impacted. Suddenly they came back strong. Suddenly, I think, since the employee well-being and employee productivity and employee happiness was kept at the center of everything, I think the results started showing pretty early. And the resilience of supply chains that Supriya was talking about, uh, initially everything seemed stuck, but within no time the resilience of supply chains came up and showed up as if nothing had happened, right? At
Yeah.
the same time, business continuity came back to almost normal. I'm seeing that the market is opening up. I'm on the very unique, I would say, crosshair of the current world of human resources and the future, because I work in the gig space. I head the gig now recruitment for EY, and that is where at all points of time, what keeps me awake at night is basically what is going to be the demand of the digital nomads 5 years, 10 years from now. Folks who are really looking at approaching their jobs through telepresence and telecommuting, and not through being where the job wants me to be, right? So I think a lot of policies that came in were expected to hit us only 5 years, 7 years from now, and I think we've done well to be able to make all of these get incorporated in super quick time, as if nothing had happened. And I think we are extremely lucky that we are at the you know l- level of technology adoption in 2020, which wasn't around 20 years back. Otherwise, I think the world would have stopped. But I don't think the world did stop beyond a few weeks, and human resources played a strong role in that. I think we'll continue to do that, because what we are hearing now is a little bit of a work from home fatigue, that people are now
Yes.
starting to experience. 7 months, 8 months. So the next challenge is going to be, and these challenges will continue to kind of shift and look very different every few months. And I think the uncertainty around when will the office restart happen, people are really waiting for it. However, the firms, and the policies, the way they've been redesigned in a quick time, everyone is seeing the benefits. There are going to be pitfalls. I think all that we need to do now in the next couple of months is to ensure that we are able to sustain beyond the pitfalls. We are able to anticipate the pitfalls and create a better solution for the next stage of this lockdown and stuff. And I hear, Ramya, Malaysia just announced the third stage of lockdown. That's what my friends down there informed me. So what do you think is going to be,
Yeah.
the next challenge for you?
Yeah. So Tanvir, Supria, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Absolutely resonate with whatever you've been talking about now. And Tanvi, it's interesting that you bring up this point about you're working on something in the future and what was expected to be the future, and that is sort of sped up. The process is basically sped up now, right? So I can relate to that because I personally was a digital nomad for about 2.5 years before I took up something with Maxis a couple of months ago. So I was a freelancer for about 2.5 years, supporting a client. So it was Unilever. I actually set up the entire gig ecosystem for Unilever. And at that point in time, when we were trying to manage the change, or when we were trying to convince a business to say why you should use a freelancer, why should you be looking at gigs, using giggers to set up some of these things, there would be quite a lot of apprehension to say, the person has to be here in the office, sitting next to me. I need to see what this person's doing. We need to get the laptop. How can they access confidentiality? And they would give me like 100 different reasons of why it should not happen or why it would not happen. Right? And this was in an industry where there's still a possibility. It's not a completely controlled industry like banking. When we were trying to have this conversation with someone in banking, they would just completely shut out the idea. They're like, no way this is going to happen in a controlled business like banking because there's so much data that we cannot share. There's so much confidentiality in how we work. It's not going to be possible. But just within a few months of the pandemic, I think now everyone has to work in a remote environment. Everyone has to make things happen, though you're not based, or some of us were, let's say, stuck somewhere else and could not come back home on time or come back to your base location on time, but you just made it happen. So for me, it was really like speeding up things that would have taken more than 5 years for people to come to acceptance. It just happened in 5 months, or even let's say 5 weeks of the pandemic, and it just happened so fast, right? And they also started, I think businesses also started appreciating that there are certain futuristic HR practices which we need to adopt so that we can really start making the change happen together. So that's one part what pandemic has actually done to HR, right? And from my personal experience of trying to implement this in an organization to see how it is being picked up. Now I also see that there are some movements that have been stopped. Like earlier, I think the expectation was that someone has to be in London or has to be in Singapore to make this happen. But today they're like, oh, you can be based in any part of the world, just get the job done, right? So that's the change that I'm seeing. And this relates to this whole aspect of globalization and localization. So there is more acceptance to saying that, let's say the talent is in India, there's no necessity for the talent to really move out of India, move to respective locations to make things happen. Rather, you just tap into the talent from wherever they are. And then that's the basis of your open talent economy, right? And as in how you want to make sure that you tap into talent in all parts of the world. So that's one thing that I see from my experience of what's happened in HR. The second is that earlier, I think with business, there was also an expectation that, okay, HR has A, B, C things to do, and they would do that, and we don't have to do it. We would be, let's say, business managers, and they have to be HR managers. But the pandemic sort of flipped the whole thing, and every business manager has also had to put on an HR manager's hat, be it employee well-being, take care of the team performance, the team's well-being, making sure that your people are safe, making sure that your people have the right ecosystem to work with, and understand employee pain points with this. So I think every single person has had to play a role of a HR manager, which I see as something that's really good in the long term, because now it's more of, oh yeah, it's also part of my responsibility to make sure that, people are in a safe environment, to make sure that they are able to perform what they need to do. And it's just not an HR responsibility. So I see that really as a big shift. Most organizations, and even in terms of people's attitude towards how they let's say working with their employees or looking at their employees, treat their employees for that matter. So I think it's fantastic to see that happen. Yes, in the context of Malaysia, we are in our third wave, more severe than the first two waves actually in Malaysia. And we do have a lockdown, but I think businesses have already realized how they should be managing lockdown or managing a movement control order. So it's a lot more easy to make changes, make shifts now than what was about let's say 2-3 months ago. But now I think acceptance to say that, okay, even if this extends for another 2 weeks, we can manage it. That should not be really a problem. We know how to manage it. We've sort of got the ecosystem right to make things happen in spite of a lockdown. So that's a good part to the whole thing, I think. And certain organizations, even government organizations, which would have never thought of work from home, even for the next 10 years, they just had to make arrangements to make sure that the people can actually work from home. And it's quite interesting to see, at least in Malaysia, how the government employees have also picked up skill sets to work remotely from home, how to manage work and home, and at the same time make sure that you're delivering things for the country. So it's just quite interesting how things have happened really fast, and in industries which we potentially would not have expected them to change in the next many years. So that's quite interesting. We are speaking on this topic of, let's say, the future of HR. How have you seen, let's say, digital transformation of HR happen over the last few years, be it technology or even being some of these digital initiatives we've got within HR? How have you seen that impacting HR?
Do you want me to take that up, Ramya?
Yes, Tanvir.
All right.
Yeah, please.
All right. Let's look at it. It's an interesting one, and I think that is where the real core concepts of HR are getting stretched. Where one thing that is always held at the heart of HR is the human part of human resources, and with technology, you're certainly sitting at a kind of a crossroads, right? That do you want to allow technology to really take over the humanistic elements of HR as well or not? And I think that is where a lot of work is happening. And that is also the place where a few points, sorry, I just got muted somehow. So I think that is also a place where these kind of dilemmas that we're thinking about are also playing their part. However, if I were to take a small example, and let's probably try and extrapolate, if we were to take an example of a chat bot, and let's say we have folks who are coming in, they are with various of different age groups, with different levels of experience, and with a more digital future, and with varying levels of digital adoption as well. You don't expect everyone to be working on premise. So there's going to be a future which is always going to be a hybrid model, on and off premise, kind of a combination of both. Which is where I think employee engagement can certainly not be left aside, or cannot be applied in a differential manner for the on-premise employees vis-a-vis the off-premise. And that's where probably chatbots are going to be important. And when people say that, hey, chatbots are probably going to dumb down the humanistic side of things, I think that's as distant from the truth as it can be. However, chatbots are never going to, let's say, replace the human element completely. They're only going to supplement it. And I think a couple of other aspects that I clearly see coming into the picture is the next generation is a lot more expressive. They want to share what they feel like as of today, as of now. at this hour, right? And I think the idea about getting them to express is only going to help them bring out the best in themselves. And that's where I think firms are going to use technology a lot more in terms of keeping a tab on how they feel and how motivated they feel as of today, and what really can be done if, let's say, the pulse is not coming out to be extremely positive at any given point of time. So I think moodometers are going to come in a big way. Chatbots are going to be supplementing the human to human interaction through a little bit of technology and providing that data, which is so easy for a chatbot to kind of present. And of course, at the other side of the story, with technology coming in, is also going to be from the fact that, I mean, there's a very worrying factor. I'm happy to be in minority here from a gender perspective on the panel. But if I were to, let's say, compare the representation of women in the workforce in, say, 2000 vis-a-vis 2020, it's actually nosedived. And it is true not just for India, it's also equally true for some of the larger economies like the US and the UK. It's actually almost exactly the same story all over, percentage points maybe a little here or there. And that is where I think through technology providing the telecommuting and option of work from anywhere, not just work from home, it's absolutely work from anywhere, like what you were doing for those 2.5 years, Ramya. I think if that is an enhancer of experience and opportunity, I think that will be the real impact of technology. That will be the real impact of the digital future as we want to see it, which is going to be really meaningful, because I think the world needs both sides of the universe to be represented equally for better decisions, for better culture, and whatnot. And I mean, there is enough research now. If we were just to look at the top 500 firms as to which firms show up on a more regular basis on these best places to work, the ones which have more women on the corporate boards always show up on a more regular basis. So I think that's our answer, that technology will continue to only enhance
Yeah.
our basic priorities from a human resources angle.
Yeah. So, Tanvir, I mean, yet again, I'm another living example of what you actually said, because the reason why I took a break was because my son was 2.5 years at that point in time. And if this technology or this idea of future of work wasn't something that was accepted in the organization that I was part of, I would have probably just taken a break for 2.5 years or 2 years and then go back to work. But what actually changed was that I did have that freedom of working from anywhere, still contributing as much as I could, at the same time prioritizing my family and my son, and which sort of helped me manage everything and balance. And I completely agree to what you're saying. I think technology is really, really enabling that, and especially from the aspect of having more equality, if I can call it, for making sure that women are represented in the right way, and also acknowledging that there are certain responsibility that women do automatically come with, even as an employee to the organization. So Supriya, it was quite interesting to when you were talking, when Chitra was introducing you. I think there's a lot of emphasis that also on D&I. There was an award for best place for women to work. What are your thoughts on this, Supriya? Has technology really enabled, or are there other factors supporting this in your organization?
No, fair question, Ramya. I was very happy to see Tanvir talk so vociferously and so intently on this, because I think the more the leaders talk, and I would say the more the male leaders talk, and I think the example is just going to be set forward. I think we just need to have a dialogue on this. So happy to see it's worked for you very well, and congratulations to your organization for setting up such an inclusive culture, which is not about rat race. It's about picking your own pace and allowing. So I think the key word here is choice. I always say that, as women, there is a lot of work that we need to do. If you look at statistics, I'm part of many of these board conversations, and you look at in the US, they say that, it's about 4.5 to 5 hours. Let's say about 4.5 hours a man works, a woman works about probably 5. The difference is not that much. And we are talking about household work. In India, it's about, 5.5 hours that a woman works, the man works 0.5. So you can imagine what we are talking about. So it's a lot of difference. There is a childcare responsibility, there is elder care. I can tell you, I have a loving husband, a doting one. I don't think I can wish anything different from that in my life. I'm not blessed. I work hard at my marriage, and so does my husband. I think we together do it, and we call it with a very simple thing to say we have a balanced household where decisions are equally there. And if he takes some, I know what to discuss and when to fall in line. And if I take some, he does that. And I think that Socrates said, right, if you want to change the society, you got to start with the home. So my sense is it is not going to be only technology. Though I'm leaving a technology company, a data company, my answer would have been say, of course, let's give 5 thumbs up, cheers to technology. Technology is going to probably be one of the levers, which is going to be, when utilized, when pronged in, it's going to help us get where we want. Reason being, I would have stayed perhaps longer in a job. And I say I represent any woman who's in a corporate world, not necessarily me in person, but it's just to say, if there is a flexibility, if there is empathy, if there is largely an inclusive culture, women will tend to stay longer and the leaking pipeline will stop.
Yeah.
Because we have 2 problems. We need to get more women on board. However, we need to also stop women from exiting. Because the moment we reach a certain position, our bank balance looks a lot more attractive. We know we were able to fend and buy what we want. The material part is taken care. The input that a woman is giving to the organization gets a lot more, because the going gets tough as you reach the top. There are so very few. We only see men all around. I go to a golf course, I see only men. I go to my lunches and dinners, I see only men. You cannot shy away from the fact. And therefore, I realize at times I'm giving a lot more. Now, if my return from the corporate tends to be less, well, you know what? What is my real need to work?
Yeah.
And therefore, it's quite easy to exit. And we know that women, when they exit corporate, is when they're reaching the top. And you see that top pipeline is leaky. Why is it leaky? Because the input and the output ratio sometimes doesn't balance as materially as it ought to balance. Sometimes the culture gets a little tough. So in my recent conversation somewhere else, I was saying men don't have to go all the way to make us feel comfortable. Well, just loosen up a bit. You have this old boys network, new boys network, all of these networks that you have. Well, just loosen up a bit. Give us a little bit of a space, 2 feet to stand. You know what? Chuck it. We'll navigate the rest. It's not that complicated. We have 2 eyes, 1 nose, lips. We go to the same institutes as you go to. So my very simple thing is that India took many, many years and decades to get independence. I'm just waiting a day when women are going to be independent. One day when everything is equal. One day when, you don't wear a gender lens. One day when you don't wear a geo lens. How is it that a lot of design work gets headquartered in US and, the geos have to fight their way through? So I love the conversation. I love the optimism that technology is going to solve many things. There is this pandemic that's brought us all on an equalizing platform. But trust you me, the reality is not as markedly different as this. The more we change, the more we tend to remain the same. So I'm waiting for the new world order to come. You and I have to work hard at it. Women for another 5,800 years have to work a lot harder at it. We are not going to, at least I'm not going to die in an equal world, but I'll be happy if my granddaughter is born in an equal world. So I think for the next 50, 80, 100 years, let's continue to be at it. Let us not quit just because it's easy for us to quit. I think we owe it to the entire community. Let's make sure that even if we quit out of choice. I'm done. I want to make it now. Do something different. I think the quitting out of choice is I'm comfortable with. Quitting out of no choice is something that doesn't resonate well with me. So Ramya, I'm all for diversity. I'm all for inclusivity, but cultures have to evolve. HR, by the way, has a very, very critical role to play in it. HR leaders have to call in the shots at the right time. Sit down with CEOs, make them pledge for diversity. I do not see many CEOs signing in for that. I don't see this as a boardroom conversation yet. It is still a nice to do. It is still that we have to prove diversity works. I have a huge gut reaction to it. I don't have to prove that women at work make it a better place. All this research, for what? India is 48% women, 20% in the workforce. Where are the 28% women? And who can prove to me that they don't deserve a workplace? I don't think I buy that argument. I don't need any research. I think we are born equal. You just need to have an equal place at workplace, right through the levels and the growth and success and a choice at every step. Do I want to take a maternity break? Somebody should ask me. Do I want to come back? am I done with maternity break 6 months? I'm ready to catapult my career into excellence. I think those conversations women need to lead and not anyone else around them. So it's a little bit of a strong view, but it comes from personal experience.
I can understand. I can absolutely understand. And like you said, I think I was blessed to be in an organization which was extremely inclusive and was very open to the idea. But even within that organization, I wouldn't think 100% of the leaders share the view, right? And even if I were to think of would I have had that conversation with everyone else? If there was someone else as a manager, that maybe not. I would still have thought 100 times before having that conversation or even taking that break for that matter. So I absolutely agree with what you're saying. I think it's a lot more about empathy from the organization perspective. Inclusive, not just from the aspect of putting up that word in your annual reports, but really practicing it to translate that into practice in respective organizations. And I think it is an entire mindset shift that needs to happen with everyone in an organization as well. And probably also, I think it's so I've lived in this part of the world for about 8 years now. So I've been in a different context where maybe it's not so sharp or so evident of, let's say women quitting the workforce at a particular point in time, driven by certain reasons. So that's probably why my views are not that strong as you have put through. But I agree with that point of inclusivity and making sure that we were born equal. There's no need to really fight for it. So that I agree to that point. It's been an interesting conversation. I'm enjoying this. I hope the audience are as well. So I see there are a few questions from the audience. So I'm just going to take them up to keep this interactive. So the first question is from Suresh Kumar. So it's a question on would a full-time management degree or a full-time employment be still relevant 10 years from now? With Tanvir, with the current context and things that you're working on, would you want to take up that question?
Yeah. Thanks, Ramya. I think the view that I have on this is slightly different. First question that we probably should be asking is, what is the evolving role of universities from today, for the next 10 years? That's the first question that we need to ask. And I think with a lot of universities being able to run the show with such panache, despite the lockdown, despite all of things turning virtual, I think the first question that probably folks may want to ask themselves, the organizational leaderships as well as the institutional leaderships, is whether the current model of university is going to sustain, right? I think the level of agility that universities show today is much better than what it was, let's say, 20 years back, 30 years back. A lot to do with the fact that corporates have also kind of climbed down, from their, I would say, the ivory towers, to say that we have to work together. There is no option. We just have to ensure that we are in it together, and we do all these, co-opt courses or, collaborative work on the crosshair of university and corporate. So a lot of that is already changing. A lot of universities are launching courses which are, a lot more corporate, heavy and oriented towards prepping up people for the future of jobs and all of that. However, at the same time, the idea, that probably universities will be looking a lot different from how they are today, is something that needs another day of discussion. To answer the question now from Suresh, I think it's a great one. Is that this is a question that one needs to ask herself or himself. What exactly do I want to elicit from or derive from a university degree is the first question one needs to ask herself or himself. And I think that's the first point that defines whether a university degree is relevant or not. Relevance is completely context specific. If one is looking at building a great network, passing out from a top bracket university is a great thing to do, because you suddenly become borrowing Supriya's terminology, the old boys club of a particular top-rated university, right? You get a foot in the door, which otherwise, let's say if someone comes through with a PhD or with a FPM from one of the top universities, they are counted amongst the top few and all. However, if it is all about pure play learning, I don't think the world of learning lives anywhere close to what it was 10 years back. With the Udemy, the Coursera, and so many others, bringing the top universities to your home screen, is something that has kind of completely accelerated the evolution of learning. Learning as of today is on demand. It is bite-sized. It is for me to decide and define when I want to learn what kind of skill sets, and it is not bound by a 2-year timeline which I have to devote. So it's going to be to each his own. If I want to engage in a 2-year degree, that's my choice. Completely depending on whether I'm going to get out of this university degree what I want out of it or not. And I think that's something for it's completely on the person to define and decide that part. Um,
Yep.
I think with that, I'll probably hand it over to Supriya for her inputs.
Thanks, Tanvir. No, I love the way you started, Tanvir, and I love the ending more. I love that because it's about you, what you want. So I'll simplify it even further. I'm simply saying, it's not going to be either or. We are still, if you look at it, the world, the America, I mean, who's voting for Trump? And not to make this a political conversation by any means, but when you looked at the analytics, the statistics, you realize that there was this Americans who were a certain education and not. And there's a very clear profiling of a certain age group with a certain education, and you kind of standardize that. You know that a lot of Americans are not perhaps going for full-time degrees in the large percentages when I draw and I compare it to India. When I look at the STEM kind of charts in India for the women, I mean, it's 1350 percentage, 1350 percentage increase. So we are still a nation that values core education. We are still a nation that values, unfortunately, engineering and medical professions above others. So one has to see this in context. If you're suddenly transported to Australia, New Zealand, US, maybe the reality is different. If you're going to stay in India for a very long time, the reality is a bit different. So my sense is married in the context, there are tons of analytics and data and statistics around. See how this makes sense. But of course, the core thing is what's your choice? Is your choice only education? Well, that's not going to work. Irrespective of whether you have an education or not, the organizations you work with, the gig economy you work with, you will have to update yourself with new skills. You'll have to go and pick up something on analytics, data strategy, AI, machine learning. You cannot shy away from any of those, be it in any function you're in. And right now we are respecting the HR function in this conversation. You just have to do that. So my sense is it's about education different, knowledge coming in differently, information distilling itself to insight different. And at the end of the day, all of this, my friend, means nothing if you're not going to office and practicing those skills, because that's how capability gets built. You come on these sessions, you talk, your speakership gets built, your ability to talk crisp and influence gets built. So you know what? These are going to be multiple things you'll have to kind of have. It's going to be a bouquet of skills, education, knowledge, and information that you need to carry, and therefore pick and choose. The point is, picking and choosing is going to become increasingly easy with technology, because MIT, Harvard, IITs, trust me, in my living life, I don't see them disappearing, but I see them becoming much more accessible to a global audience and not being, like Tanvir said, to borrow the phrase, being the property of the ivory tower or a few of those. So, that is the world that we live in. Accessible, affordable, but by choice education and skills.
Yeah, I would agree, Supriya. And I really like the point where you said, I think India is still a country that really values core education. And, I think there's still, as someone who's come out of India and lived out of India for 8 years, I can actually vouch for it, saying there was no old boys club to be part of, when I came here to Malaysia. I couldn't actually go and say, oh, I come from BIM or whichever university and say, okay, I want to be there, or I demand to be a senior manager role because I come from a particular university. I had to start from scratch. So, I was competing with people who were just fresh grads from university. And, these are not your IITs or MIT that you're talking about. So there was a lot of pride and ego that I had to let go of, I think, to say, okay, fine. So I may have an MBA and 2.5 years of work experience, but that doesn't matter. You need to start from scratch. So I think that is not going to change. For the foreseeable future, that's not probably going to change in India. But I think everywhere else it is different. it could be a little bit different than to the level in which we see this happening in India. The other element to this is also skills, right? So I think there's a lot of emphasis on hiring for particular skill sets and not necessarily for a degree, which I am seeing in a lot of organizations in a lot of countries. So do you come with a certain set of skill sets, maybe data science or a specific skill set that you've picked up, not through a degree, but rather a course, or you've just had the experience of working in that space in spite of you not having an MBA or a particular MS, MTech sort of a degree. So I think that's becoming a lot more prevalent now in organization. And we're even looking at things like paying for skills, right? So it doesn't matter whether you are a director of an organization, you may be getting paid in 5 digits, 6 digits, but if you have a skill set that's super critical for the organization, even if you're someone with, let's say, 4 or 5 years of experience, you can demand that level in the organization. Not as a director, maybe you're called something else, a specialist, or you're called architect or something, but then you still bring that skill set. So there's a lot of emphasis on skill sets that's coming in. Now, to that answer on a full-time management degree, I think it's more of what are the skill sets that you're picking up from your degree or from your education. It could be, let's say, I mean, you are in a general management degree, or you're learning something on general management, but what do you want to specialize in? Because that's not going to help you eventually. I think it's a certain set of skill sets that you need to pick up that can actually make you grow in the organization. So if I were to talk about me, in my case, it's primarily talent. I'm not a generalist. I'm a super specialist for that matter. And it is in talent space. It is in leadership development. It's in talent development. But these are skill sets you pick up later in your life. It's not something you pick up in the university. And but that doesn't mean I completely discount what I learned in my MBA. There are a lot of things that I learned while I was in my career. So it's really about while I was in BIM, but it's really about what is going to help you grow eventually in your career or in a particular organization. With full-time employment, so as someone who actually analyzed different markets from a gig economy perspective or from a freelancer economy perspective, I think the scenario in India is different. We will still have a lot of full-time jobs. We are not going to become an organization, or as an organization, we are not going to have a lot of flexible workforce. But on the other hand, like what Supria mentioned, maybe in the US, an organization could work with a 40% full-time, 60% flexible workforce. Or another country like even I think Singapore, a lot of organizations are looking to having a lot more flexible workforce as part of the configuration. But India may be a little bit far away from it. Multiple reasons, right? No right, wrong reasons to this. But I think if you look at markets other than India, I think there's a little bit of more reception to say, okay, we could work with a flexible workforce. We could work with much more contract. Contract is a wrong term to use, but more of part-time employees, if you can say, or if there could be flexible employees that you can have. So I do see that picking up in this part of the world. I do see that picking up in Europe and the US. The pandemic probably has put a stop to this for now, not in terms of adoption, but more of, are people really safe, or are people really taken care of from, let's say, a pension perspective if they are a gigger, if they are, as a freelancer. I think so those questions are getting answered. But I do see this picking up in terms of not so many full-time jobs. A lot more people are more willing to experiment with part-time roles as freelancers in the rest of the world. At least that's a context I can bring into the conversation.
Great point, Ramya. I think just topping it off and putting a popular terminology there, what you mentioned about looking at specific skills. And I think that is where, with the Uberization of roles and breaking down of these old world monolithic job descriptions to smaller, shorter, and more, I think, agile job descriptions, that goes back and links up with the entire concepts of micro skilling, which leads to micro tasks. And I think Supriya also very briefly mentioned about it, that it's not just the skills that are important, it's also how the skills can be turned into opportunity and are kind of refined through practice. So I think there is going to be a triage. One side is going to be the education, second is the training, and third is the experience. All three have to work together for folks to be able to make sense of how they are progressing in their careers, and that is going to be the flavor. Whether that happens in a 6-month time span or a year-long degree or a 2-year degree is going to be a personal decision of what one wants out of it. So.
We have some other interesting questions, Ramya. We got fascinating one on work from home and the perils, the pros and cons. You may want to take
Yes.
that.
Yes, just going to take that. Let me just read this for everyone. So we've all seen how big tech companies have pivoted to a work from home culture and have said that until the end of 2021, they do not expect their employees back in the premises. So these are your Facebooks or the Googles, the LinkedIn's probably. Today, the boundary between work and home has almost been erased. What do you think is the flip side to this? Supriya, you want
to? I love that question. I think there is so much of debate on future of work and right now the scenario. So there is a flip side to this. There absolutely is. The flip side is multifold. Let's look at first from the employee angle. The flip side is when you look at our people who are working with us, our employees, our workforce, our talent, there are multiple, again, segmentations to that talent. There are women we've spoken about, so we won't elaborate on that much, but just a touch point to say there is a double duty they're doing today. And therefore, and the schools, when you have little kids, they're asking parents to be online. And this is tough for both parents when they're working and perhaps in nuclear families and no one else. I've had members in my team who are both men and women have asked to say that I have my child who needs to sit through 3 to 6 of the session and therefore I can't do anything else. So first of all, it requires for that person to come have a safe space to talk to you. As a leader, you need to be open. But at the end of the day, just look at them. They're doing homework, they're doing children work, they're also doing housework. And then on top of that, office work and calls if you're, plugged into international remote, quarters of life. So it's going to be tough. So I think this is putting a lot of pressure and therefore there is going to be stress. So I think this is not sustainable. The fact that you can't get out and do vacations and there is a new physiology that comes in, as a not a millennial. It's so tough now. It's called staycation. I don't know how that's a staycation. It's a stay. It's not a vacation. So pardon my Gen X view on this, but I'm happy to get killed and murdered online. It's online, right? You can't physically kill me. So I like the digital use of technology there. But that's some stress it's going to be putting on people like you, me, and everyone else, and especially the young couple. So there is a flip side to that. There is a flip side to say that there is no meter down and meter out. You have to, unless you define your boundaries, like I would say I'm very boundaried in my life. I know when someone can reach me, someone cannot. And of course, emergencies are available. So I think we need to teach people, Ramya, how to create your boundaries at home, at office, so that you can have a peaceful life. Because before I'm a mother, before I'm a country manager or VP, I'm Supria first. So I think having people come to terms with who you are, kind of value that's there. I would again come back to HR because that's the focus of this conversation. It does put a lot of challenging sleepless nights for Tanvir and you at the end of the day to say, how do you bring culture online? People who love to talk will end up talking. People who love to connect will end up connecting. People who are integrated in the organization will pick up the phone and talk. But how about people who are new? How about people who are young and entering the workforce? How about people who, even in a live session, in a face-to-face, chose to keep quiet? And I'm not going to simplify by calling it introvert. That's way too simplified an answer. I would say, how about those who yet haven't figured or got the comfort, therefore to come forward? How are you going to integrate all of them? How are you going to coach and develop your people when you realize that sitting in a classroom doesn't work? Right now, you don't even know how many of these faceless audience muted, whether they are listening or watching Netflix by the hour or doing something else. You just don't have a clue, no matter how much of motometer you're going to do. It's going to be that much tough. So tuning into the psyche, tuning into the feeling, emotion, connecting. So the whole world, I would say, is moving from a customer engagement to customer experience. HR is going to be very challenged from moving from employee engagement to employee experience. And I think it's going to be a very, very innovative and a challenging time. And I think we need to come up with new solutions because business leaders are going to demand that. Our work is going to demand that. So I think that is not all good to work from home. I would always say a blend. And I think that's what the world will look at. Plug in, be gender neutral, and kind of be more empathetic and use technology wherever you can to plug in, tune in, and do the emotion conversation more than anything else. So that is what I would say. Tanvir?
Thanks, Supriya. I think there's very little left to say the way you have articulated. The only point that I would probably want to partially add, because you did mention about empathy, I think there's always room for more empathy. Given the fact that we don't even know what we're going to be facing 6 months from now, should this lockdown continue, I think the only way to keep ourselves honest, humble, and I would say to ensure that we keep the harmony in the organization going is to ensure that we are empathetic at all points of time. It is going to be a little of uncharted territory going forward. I think there are both sides to it. There is a flip side to the coin. However, I would want to probably also play the optimistic card here. I see a lot of women making a restart in these times, because this is the time when you know you can be anywhere. You could be choosing the number of hours and the times in the day when you would be available, and I think that's a very key skill for everyone to learn. So I think considering that the work at home, the household chores, not work from home or anything related to that, has now to be shared a lot more by both the husband and the wife. Um, I think one thing that becomes all the more important is to make policies that are equivalent, that are not just pointed or looking at the benefit of the women employees, but equally for the men as well. Um, at the same time, I think I see this as a massive inflection point of the unseen part of the potential workforce that never came into the mainstream, and I'm talking about people with disability. So I think the WHO data says, or rather ILO data says that 1 in 16 people in India has a disability that can be seen or could probably not be tangible or not be easy to make out of. It could be a neurodiversity, right? Times like these could be a big boon for folks of such backgrounds, and I think um, if equivalent policies are brought in, I think the folks with disability will be a lot happier than than just being given the what we call the band-aid treatment. Ensuring that let's say the workplace is safe for them and stuff like that, which was the starting point a few years back. But I think now the theme is going to change, because now we're talking about changing the real ether of the equation. Something that is not tangible, that cannot be touched, that can only be experienced, right? So I think that is where the policies are going to be important. While there will be the downside of work from home, yes, absolutely, it'll be as challenging for human resources to make sense of this change as it was when the human resource professionals of 80s and 90s who were trained for labor relations, and suddenly the knowledge economy started taking over, and suddenly there was a completely different equation altogether. And now it's within the knowledge economy, or whichever economy we talk about, suddenly the work from home or work from anywhere will start posing similar pressures at the seams, which needs to be addressed in super quick time. And I don't think any one of us have been trained, taught, or been given any kind of a head start for preparing for these kind of times. So I think it's going to be a great time for organizations and institutions to work together to do a little bit of a research, and this is going to be real-time research, in situ research, so that we get real-time results as well, real-time sense of what we are seeing and how we expect it to improve, with the required steps in future.
Yeah. And I think some practical ways in how organizations are supporting it may not be all the answer that the organization has, but then I think everyone sort of realizes, and I was talking to some of my friends, and they were saying that I think the psychiatrists and the psychologists have been working really hard over the last few months. There's been increased, people really seeking out for help from psychologists and psychiatrists, which is in a way a side effect of having been stuck at home or working from home, work at home and work from home, everything coming together. So I think that is definitely a reality, that it's not an all flowery picture that everyone gets to work from home. It's really not possible, I think. And also, like I'm saying, I think the way organizations are starting to help is a bigger focus on mental well-being. A lot of times, I think over the last many years, this used to be a topic not all organizations were talking about, but now taking responsibility for for an employee's mental well-being and providing the support, employee assistance, people they could reach out to. I think some policies have also changed in certain organizations. Like, we do support, let's say, if you want to reach out to a psychologist, we have someone that we can refer you. So I think those are ways in which this is changing. Like I say, I think it's not all flowery picture, a work from home situation, but I think we are learning, and it will always be a good blend. It's always good to have that blend of working from home and having the flexibility to not work from office if there's something at home that demands you to be at home. So I think that's probably the way to look at it. There's another question also from, this is from Dr. Pavitra. There are multiple questions there, so I'm going to just take it one by one. Starting with, how does AI influence in managing human capital? Okay, so this is something that I am super passionate about. Maybe I'll just start and then pass on to Tanvir and Supria. So Pavitra, thanks for the question. So I think AI has been like a hot topic across industries, across functions over the last many years. In HR, of course, it is being, it's making an impact. There's a lot of disruptions that's happening because of AI. But I think there's a larger lens of saying, is it ethically right? Because you're dealing with people in this case, primarily a lot with people, decisions to people, people's career, or decision to be recruiting someone. So I think there's an element of that that's coming into the picture. Now, what I have seen in my experience, or what I've helped some of my clients or in some of my organizations, is that AI is making an impact across the different practices in talent management or in human capital management. Let's say if you look at recruitment, I think there's AI in terms of technology. So AI that's being used to hire candidates, to pre-screen candidates, which sort of reduces the work that recruiter have, so that recruiter can really play the role of what they call as a talent advisor to the business. So a lot of the operational part of doing the basic check in terms of candidates is sort of done through AI. Now, a more interesting use of AI that I'm seeing sort of work through in a lot of talent management practices is how can you how can you use AI, or how can you use technology to sort of look at skill sets requirements or development needs that different employees have? And how can you generate content for learning, for example, which is very customized to each and every employee? Because the earlier practice in terms of learning and development many years ago was really that you would do a learning needs analysis, then you would offer different courses to your employees and things like that. But what AI has really done is to really customize learning for each and every person in the organization. I may want to learn ABC, but someone else may want to learn XYZ. But today with AI, I think it's possible to give me ABC and give another person XYZ without doing an extensive learning needs analysis or doing something a lot more human intensive or labor intensive work with respect to learning and development. So I think that's where AI is really helping, and also putting together multiple career paths, for example, for someone. So if, let's say, I want to become a CHRO, what are the different experiences I should have? And this can be really real time based on the skill sets that I have, my future aspirations, putting together a lot of information that I can provide about my aspiration, my purpose, things that I want to do, and help me reach that destination that I have. So I think that's where AI has been really helpful with respect to human capital management. Over to you, Tanvir.
Thanks. I think, Ramya, you covered a couple of very interesting aspects. In I think, recruiting, if you look around, there are so many products that are floating in the market today. Some of the better known ones are, I think the best known one is by IBM. There is Watson for recruitment. It just picks up the skill sets and it provides. But I think there is a lot more to it. At this point of time, if we see, we are at a little bit of an inflection point in terms of with the skill sets seeing a very quick half life as compared to what it used to be in the past. A lot of people who were hired for specialized skill sets 3, 4, 5 years back, and those who probably would not have had the opportunity to kind of enhance on their existing skill sets, are becoming a little obsolete for the organization as the organizations are trying to disrupt themselves. And which is where I think the AI aspect is coming in and helping people, helping organizations take decisions which which part of the organization needs to be retrained earlier, or in whose skills need to be enhanced much faster as compared to the rest of the organization. And I think there is a lot of work that is happening in terms of identifying these on a real time basis, the skill families, the job families that need to be redefined, and the folks who probably are the best fits. And when we talk about best fits, there are different classifications. There is a absolute best fit, there is a stretch fit, and then probably a pessimistic side of it, that the skills the person currently has are not fungible enough for the new set of positions, in which case you need to take tough decisions. And I think that is where AI is going to play a big part in the next 3 to 4 years. If I was just to look at the existing skill set trends, I think a lot of the old skill sets that are going out of currency have a way of being transduced to being utilized for newer skill sets. I know that India as an economy is going to see a massive skill shortage in the data science and the data analytics by 2022. We are going to be at least a million skilled, folks short of the demand that is going to be at that point of time, despite having the what we call the demographic dividend that we have on our side. But I think that is where the AI products that need to be intertwined with our existing policies. I think firms have to be far more agile. Firms have to be far more experimental to be able to allow AI as it develops and as it becomes more intelligent. Um, to be part of the experiment rather than waiting for it to perfect and then bring in the benefits coming in. So I think we need a little bit of a few bold steps to be taken by most of the organizations. I think the organizations that are at the bleeding edge of technology and consulting are already doing it. I think we need to do it at a much larger scale and scope as we move forward. Supriya?
Thanks, Tanvir. Like you said beautifully, Ramya and you have covered. Earlier for you is Ramya, for me it's you. So I think wonderfully covered. I'm just going to take 2 steps back and probably add in a comment to say, what is AI? Artificial intelligence. What are you and I? All of you on the panel, 200, 230 of you, real. We're all real human beings using our intelligence. When we don't use our intelligence, or we think we can't read data at the speed at which it's required and be able to cull out trends and insights into these data lakes that is pouring in, and India is, by the way, #1 country on generating data. There is a reason why Watson is mentioned, because by medical fraternity, given the first doctor certificate and multiple other stuff that the one can do, it's a machine at the end of the day, but has the capability even higher. So the whole point is we just need to not get caught in the words. And this is all for the you young people out there. Just step back and say artificial intelligence. It means it's done by machine. A human being is writing an algorithm. The machine is going to learn on its own, augment on its own. And perhaps that's what can be done, and therefore has a much higher statistical analytical capability to look at data than you and I can. Intuitively, we can. Intuition is nothing but a pattern determination. So when we now put this AI and superimpose it on the world of HR, multiple examples which have been given by both Ramya and Tanvir, I'm not going to repeat. I'm simply going to say, just look at what HR does to say recruitment. Well, you have a profile, the person comes in, your job is over. HRBP takes over. HRBP goes, talks, connects, moves on, gets a better job, more salary. HR get great salary outside too. They move on. Somebody else comes. The knowledge information is all gone. You're not putting down all your distilling your information out there. When you look at static performance management system, gone. I would say the most important example is employee engagement. Oh my God. HR makes us fill in that data once a year on a static form. Then they take 2-3 months to analyze the data. By the time they come out with the action plan, it's 6 months. But I have shifted. My needs have shifted. My business has shifted. So AI helps you stay dynamic, agile, to the point. It's current. And therefore, you can have multiple applications. I think the world is just waiting to explore what you can do with what HR can do with AI. It probably can do everything. And yet, it cannot do one thing, which is human connect. I doubt you can give me a machine which can read my moods in 1 second. Then, I would love for Ramya and Tanvir to read. I would love for all of you to read and talk to me. I don't think AI can substitute this. It can do it materially. The day it does this emotionally, we will cease to exist. So my call out to all HR people is up your antenna, up your ability to connect, because no AI can take your job if you have that human thing at the core of you, the way Tanvir smiles and connects, the way Ramya infectiously kind of opens the session and answers with passion. No goddamn machine in the world can touch you. So AI is not going to take away jobs if you are superlative in your delivery and excellent in your connect. Yeah, it will take away the routine and mundane, which it should, because we live in a capitalist economy. So that would be my answer.
Thanks, Supria. That was it's really nice to hear the way you put it. That it's about us upping our antenna. And it's not like AI is going to take up all the jobs that we have today. That's been interesting. So I know we have about 23 minutes now. I was just hoping if we could actually, we have a lot of students who probably want a career in HR here, and there are a lot of academicians we should probably talk about. So, say from your experience and your personal journey, what are some of the tips that you would give for someone who's venturing into HR? What should they be picking up while they are in the college, right? And what should they be looking forward to as they come into corporate, especially into HR? Would be really nice to share your thoughts on this. Supria?
Sure, Ramya. Though I think Tanvir can relate more to college. I think he's much younger, and your experience is more current than mine and dated. But I interact with many, many, many college hires, and it's just such a blessing to interact with them. Like I said, you shed decades. It's fascinating. Those are my best, months, which is July when we onboard the new college graduates. So here is what my memories are very fresh of GIM and Excel both. I would say it's a little different Indian system. I think it's changing. I respect the system that we have. I'm a total Indian Bharatiya. Trust me, I am passionately subjective about India. Even if you tell me that US is better than any other country, I am never going to believe that. I think we have a lot of potential here and great performance. I'm a total Indian. So if you don't like my answers global, well, you know what, we'll chat on another day then, sure. So I would say when you're in the college, when you're in the campus, make your bonds. I wish someone told me that when I was in campus. I made some bonds, but I was very nerdy, very studious, and I was worried about dual specialization and triple specialization and kind of getting as much as curriculum inside my system. None of that stays. None. There is a lot of curriculum that perhaps is not as relevant as we would like it to be. So I would say make friends, because when you are wanting to decode this entire AI or ML or anything, a simple call to a Ramya or a Tanvir will demystify the entire thing than perhaps you sitting and looking at all those curriculum and the algorithms. So I would say make investments in your friends, which is why I love Three Idiots. Once you make those bonds, they stay with you forever. I'm a total Bollywood, Hollywood, and a Netflix, Amazon fan. So do that. Always invest in human bonds. The second is going to be look at the project experience. Oh my God, whatever you teach, whatever is taught, whatever content, but look at the relevance of that. It could be a project you're doing. It need not follow an institute curriculum only. You can always go beyond. You can always sit at Toit and have a beer and have fun. I am not saying no to that. I definitely said that's my plus one. But you also need to be able to see if there's a company you can engage with. Look at an experience. Pick on that. Third, pick on some current skill. Your curriculums are exhaustive. But like I said, there could be something wanting. Absolutely do something on the side and pick up something else too. So I think these are 2-3 things you got to do while you're on campus. These will just going to probably land you in a very good stead. And my special call out to women. I know millennials are very different. Gen Z are very different. You can call them by whatever name you want. And yet I say the more we change, the more we remain same. So please make sure, girls out there, women out there, please network. Cafe coffee day scares you when they tell you a lot can happen over coffee. Don't let that thing scare you. Men don't bite. There are very, very good percentage. There's a higher percentage of men who are outstanding, great brothers, great friends, great partners in your life and collaborate with you. Just don't get worried by one or two incidents. Go out, shake a leg and make some friends, because together we've got to bond in, and that's how we will work in the society. It cannot be done in isolation. Men and women together need to come together. So absolutely go out and have a beer, have a coffee, do what you want to do, because that is what is going to, again, get you a great network. At the top, still 85% are men. There is no way you can shy away from half the race. And I would say, don't worry too much about society, focus inward. The final thing I would say is, irrespective of where you go, as you go further in your career, always keep two things with you: your moral compass of whether this is right for me or not, whether I should do it or not. A CEO can walk in and tell you to do this. I walked away from jobs. At one job, I walked away over I was barely 3 months into it. It was a great job. Unfortunately, it happened right after GE. I was so happy and excited that I'm going to use GE experience and become HR head in 6.5, 7 years. But there was some financial, not something right. And I just walked away in 3 months to say I refuse to be part of that company. It's great to sit down and write your memoir and kind of write with that beautiful stuff to say you had it in you to walk away, because those guts, like Indra Nooyi says, I see a lot of other skills. I wish I saw more of courage in corporate. Yeah. Courage comes when we invest early on in yourself, and you have your moral compass right, and also in your bank balance. You obviously need to eat and buy all the stuff you can, and therefore, if you don't have equal good financial to do that. So this is for men and women both. Make sure that you invest early, so that you want to kick your job sometimes and say, I don't like my manager, I don't like the company, I don't like what they stand for. Well, kick it, because another job is going to come your way. There is Tanvir hiring for gig economy, so my resume is definitely up with him. So my sense is do that. And the second, like I said, one is moral compass, where it comes from financial balance and knowing who you are. The other is always know who you are. Keep asking you, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Simon Sinek is my favorite, podcast to always watch. He says, always question the why. Be curious, not to the sense of being obnoxious, every why, no, but to the sense of being purposefully constructive and purposefully perhaps destructive. So always ask your why. Why am I doing this? Why am I on this panel? Why am I in this? Why do I want to marry this guy? Why am I saying no to him? What is this company saying? Why is the CEO talking about that? So I think keep your whys always fresh. Will never be a bore, and that will again get you friends and get you a purpose of life much higher. So I would say these are simple words of wisdom. I wish there was a panel 22 years back and someone told me this, but since I have it, it's my happy opportunity to share. So thanks, Ramya, for that.
Thank you, Supria. Tanvir, over to you.
I think it's a tough ask to go after what Supria so beautifully articulated. But if I were to just add one or two elements to it, there's hardly any space to do that. So rather is, I would say that human resources as function is always constantly under pressure. I think both of you would have seen it just as much as me, or probably more than me. I was, by the way, an honest admission here. I was a marketing and finance, trained MBA from Goa, and it came much later. It was my move into human resources was serendipitous, but I always feel that I probably came home to it. So I think one thing that any human resource professional at whichever point in their career they are needs to keep at the center of their focus is whether they are able to understand what is business and what business requires at any given point of time. I think that realization should happen as early as possible. It happens even if there are a few mistakes that one makes. You need to take those bold steps early on and be as connected to business as possible. That is absolutely one of the areas. One of the ways I would say that one needs to keep oneself honest and humble all throughout their careers as human resource professionals is to believe that I'm as much a business person as anyone sitting across the table. And for that, if it means that rather than just being right-brained individuals, or I think perception, they say, is reality, you better manage it, right? So human resources is always perceived to be, a bunch of people who are almost always right-brained. I think if we can do something to correct that, or probably to supplement our human resource training through some left brain skill sets. I think, and that too early on. And if that journey can continue, I think micro learnings, back to that same theme, I think that would help us in terms of navigating the ups and downs, the pitfalls of being perceived as an outsider, or not getting a seat at the table as a human resource professional is something that becomes it becomes much easier for one to manage those kind of conversations in their careers. I think with that, I'll probably hand it over back to you, Ramya.
Yeah, thanks, Tanvir. I think this
Ramya,
was...
I have a point. I love what
Yeah.
Tanvir said. So just a quick interjection. I actually want to endorse absolutely what Tanvir said, because I answered from an individual career perspective, but from HR back to, like I said, the true sense of the session. Tanvir, thanks so much for calling that out. I think that was a powerful call out. Being in the business, I'm someone who transitioned from HR to the world of business. And Tanvir, again, one of the other major that I wanted to do is the marketing. So I think marketing people should move to HR. They'll make a great career. I can so say that. And they make good business leaders too, I'm told. But I would say absolutely, understand business. There is a reason why sometimes HR gets a seat on the table and sometimes it still doesn't. It's personality dependent. Tanvir gets it, Ramya gets it, maybe others don't get it. What is the difference? It needs to move from personality to systemic. Yeah. Therefore, please understand, there is nothing more boring than an HR going on and telling me, I want to launch this program, I want to do this, without actually knowing what time of my resources is going away, what are they getting back. I think everything has to have a business applicability. Talk data, talk technology, they are your friends. The earlier you get used to that, earlier it used to be finance, well, that doesn't go away, but today it's data and technology. So I think just do that. Talk the language of business. Tanvir talks it beautifully. It's absolutely a pleasure to be with him on the panel. Who's going to say he's a, HR professional? It's just it's a plus to say HR who talks business so well. It's a given you got to know business. And I'm sure Ramya, same for you too. So I would just wanted to take a second and endorse that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. In fact, Supria, I was actually going to call that out as well, because I think that's a general impression about HR, right? I mean, Tanvir just put it in a very nice way, politically correct way. But the first impression in the organization is that, oh, HR, they don't know the business. I think that's the first impression that comes through most of the times, not all the time, but most of the time, I think. So it's really important to be acknowledged for being left-brained as well, and at the same time balancing it with being the right-brained person too. So I think that's a really, really important call-out, and especially when you are in the B school today, what can you really? I think that's the only thing I might want to add into what Tanvir and Supria have put together, is that I think we are very networking shy all the time when you're in school. I mean, there are only probably 2-3 people out there who are probably part of the PR committee of the school, or they're part of the placement committee, who actually get an opportunity to go and network and talk to people. And one thing that I think personally that's really helped me find my roles or find jobs or even to whatever grow in my career has been networking. I call myself a shameless networker, and I really don't hesitate to call up someone to ask for something. And that has been something that's really helped me. While I call myself shameless at that, I think the way organizations perceive it as you're very resourceful, because you find ways to get things done. You find probably easier ways of making it happen. And as Supria said, just call up someone and talk to them about it instead of looking at multiple resources to figure out what you want to do and how you want to learn them. And that's not something that's taught in school. Nobody teaches us how to network. Nobody teaches us or even tells us that you should really go out there and network and talk to people, or connect with your alumni, or connect with whoever it is. We're not taught to do that. That's super important, I think. And the second element of, if you are really planning a career in HR, you cannot discount knowing business, knowing numbers. You should be comfortable with data. You should be able to say you are implementing XYZ because it's going to directly impact the strategy that the business is trying to drive, or the priorities of the business at that point in time, which is always not something you hear from professionals. And you end up with that impression that HR is not business savvy or data savvy for that matter. So I think if these two things can be in a way addressed with the academicians as well, and how can we bring that practical aspect to the school itself, then that would really, really help people flourish in this career. So we have another 10 minutes to. There's one question probably. So it says, Chitra, is there like a time up that you're going to give us?
We can take one last question now.
Okay, so there's one question here. So from LR to HRM to HCM, the transition of realizing humans as workforce to scarce resource to more of a capital, industries have evolved, and the first foresee this were more successful. What's the next phase of human capital? I think we've been speaking a lot about this throughout the session. Any closing comments on this, Tanvir?
I think if we look at the current scheme of things, the role of HR is going to be a very blended role as we move forward. It's going to be the person who connects business to the world of talent and talent to the world of business, which perhaps, from a very LR hat was never an expectation. It was just to, I think back in the day of labor relations and the like, it was more about keeping the noise down. That's no more the case. It's the opposite. That's what has been the biggest shift in the world of HR, and I'm so happy that it has happened, which is, whatever, smallest of ripples that you see has to be, reached out to the top management in a real-time fashion, because we are nudging ourselves into a future which is of highly expressive bunch of individuals. The Gen Z are extremely expressive. Gen Z has already started showing its and making its presence felt in the workforce a few years back, and they are now going to be along with the millennials, they're going to be outnumbering the Gen Xers, of course, and then also the early millennials are also going to be increasingly in the short supply as we move forward. And all the policies as we see today, the way they are getting repurposed or even rethought or perhaps even reimagined are all being done keeping the Gen Zs in the heart of it. So I think all that human resources or human capital management, everything that we need to do is to ensure that we are future relevant, we are future focused, and the biggest disruptor as of today, I firmly believe, is not technology. Technology is just what we've been talking about. It's just an enabler. The real disruptor is actually the demographic shift, and that is the only thing. Even in the short run, probably COVID will be the biggest disruptor as of today. But prior to COVID and post-COVID, both, I think it's the Gen Z who've been the biggest disruptor. There've been, white papers that have been written about it, and it's available for everyone to download and read for themselves and make their own, calculations about it. And I think that's going to be one area where everyone can put pen to paper, put their thoughts down, see what they can glean out of it, and what do they have to offer as a human resource professional of tomorrow. I think that would be my humble submission, couple of cents that I would want to offer. Supria?
I'm going to start. Thanks, Tanvir. It's wonderful listening to you. It is coming to an end, though. It's interesting to say, I will say, like I said, I'm a favorite Hollywood, and a Bollywood big time fan. I'm saying, what's in the name? Yeah, my name, if it wasn't me, change, maybe not. So names are important because we all need to get some definition around it. And names over a period of time tend to kind of give us an expectation of what to expect. If I know there's someone finance major, I know what to expect. So names are, yes, important from that category. I'm not being totally disruptive to say, let's walk away. However, even while the academic world chooses to call it human capital, human resource management, by the way, the world of business has already moved ahead. They're already calling it chief people officer, people. Because human resource still has an industrial, we are in workforce 4.0, we are still talking about 2.2 and 3.0, which is resource. Let's maximize the resource. Let's make the resource efficient. Let's make sure it helps us in refining and giving us effectiveness and gains in our capitalist machinery. Well, I'm not a resource. I'm a talent. Give me dignity of work. Listen to me. Connect with me. Do not think I am part of your, big wheel and I'm just a cog in it. No, I would like to be the nucleus. And therefore, I think as much as the academic world is building up and augmenting and kind of accelerating, the world of business has already kind of moved ahead, and people are exploring with these innovative definitions around this. So I would say, as much as you need to worry about that, don't let that be a limiting factor. Because the words, the physiology, the coinage takes time. There has to be these movements, and academicians have to come together. The curriculums have to be renamed. You, as an individual, don't want to be caught up in that unless your interest is academic. If you don't want to be caught up in that, just do what Tanvir and I and Ramya and others have been telling. Simple. Connect to the business, connect to technology, use it to get your work done faster, understand data. More importantly, stay connected to the world of human beings. That is what is going to be a differentiator. And please, when you come up with a solution, never come up with a solution from an HR mindset. Always come up with a solution from a business mindset. Is my business going to make money? Is my business going to decrease costs? Is my margin going to go up or going to go down? Sometimes just saying, let's do a 13% ACR annual increase, let's do 14. You realize that 1% actually eats into your income. What gets eaten into your income, your margin goes down, your stock crashes. Ultimately, the same employees are unhappy. So just understanding the linkages of how the world works is perhaps going to be very, very important. My heart goes out to all the HR professionals. It's a function that has fed me for many, many years. And sometimes it is a function that does give me sleepless nights, because I would love for you to talk about business, technology, data, more importantly, my talent. Please look at my talent, everybody's talent, in a dynamic way. Stay connected. Don't use technology to hide behind and say, send me an email. Pick up an opportunity to talk, listen, and connect. Sit down with your business leaders and have multiple conversations every day, to the pain, to the extent of being a pain, because you know what? They're going to listen to you. And who knows? And I would say one thing in the closure, human resource, I've always valued OD. I somehow find that organization development, capability building, strategic organizational interventions, which is still a very nascent area in HR, needs to actually be at the top. So maybe that is what the coinage, my favorite coinage would be that. Your organization builders, your capability builders. You, if you set the culture right, will take the company to what Tanvir said at the beginning, best places to work. You guys are the ones who can do that. So don't get caught in a name. Names will follow. You build a career which is, well, the future CEOs of the world. I do not like when LinkedIn says HR cannot be the future CEOs. Well, I'm a prime example, but let's not talk about me. Let's talk about you. Be the future CEOs, the chairmen and the boards of directors of the world. That's where I would like to see HR. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Supria. Thanks. So, so we are at, we have like 2 more minutes to go. So I'm going to hand over to Chitra. It's been fun talking to you, both Tanvir and Supria. It's been lovely. I've myself picked up quite a few things from this conversation today.
Likewise, I've been taking copious amount of notes when both of you were speaking. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ramya, for a great moderation. And Tanvir, thank you so much for being a wonderful co-panelist. Thank you. And to all the audience, thank you so much for listening and tuning in and not having the numbers drop to like no one. So thank you so much for hanging in there with us for we chat. Thank you.
Over to
It
you,
was an
Chitra.
extremely insightful session. Thank you to all the panelists for shedding so much light on human capital management, and also for that great advice towards the end. I now request Professor Satya to deliver the vote of thanks.
Hi, Ramya, Supriya, and Tanvir. It's been a long time that I've had conversations, such powerful conversations regarding HR for quite some time now. I would like to take this opportunity to thank each one of you, Ramya, Supriya, and Tanvir, for spending your valuable time with us and to give good insights to our students. Special thanks to Ramya for agreeing to moderate this session and then trying to get in touch with Supriya and Tanvir and listing out all those areas which are up for discussion and taking this forward. Okay. On behalf of BIM Trichy, the director, faculty, and the students of the 36th and 37th batch of the institution, we would like to place our appreciation to each one of you for having spent your time with us. And we look forward to more such interactions with our students in the near future. Thank you so much for being with us. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Satya.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. And Jayanti, I'm sorry, Jayanti from WDC, from Supriya's team, had been instrumental in getting me connected with Supriya and then take things forward. Thank you, Jayanti, and the team at WDC for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Satya.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank
Tanvir. Yeah, thanks.
We love being here. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the conference and a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you,
It's
everyone.
been wonderful.